Hello, my name is ML, and today I'm going to be critiquing recorded footage of my speed solves for the 2014 Sudoku Grand Prix, Round 1, hosted by Turkey. I did a practice solve of every puzzle to simulate competition settings, and my goal is to watch myself do it in real time back on this video, and come up with ideas for how my practice might improve, so I can improve as a speed solver. So this video will be just the classic Sudoku. If you want to do these puzzles, all the links are down in the description of this video. Please help yourself, they're really cool. And with no further ado, I'm going to start critiquing my speed solving. Let's get into it. This will be the first classic puzzle here. 26 points is an easy, somewhere between easy and moderate difficulty, usually. You can see puzzles as low as 10 sometimes. Puzzles can go all the way up to, for classics, like low 80s, high 70s as a difficulty estimate. There's a 7 in box 5 here. This is a little sloppy. Let me pause here. So I'm going to back up a few seconds. What you'll notice as I casually flip my pencil around, oh, I didn't go back far enough. There we go. So trying to get my hand out of the way. The spot on the 5 here is pretty quick. The spot on the 4 on the other side is pretty quick as well, but when I'm working in boxes 4 and 6, I should be doing horizontal scanning to look into box 5, and you can see right away there's a 7 in row 4, column 4 that's placeable immediately. From the start of the puzzle, not even from the scanning that I'm doing. So it's a little weird that I'd be popping the 5 and the 4 and not quickly look in row 4 and pop that in. So I didn't quite finish my meal as I was in the middle of eating it, I guess. So that's a good thought. I went back to box 1 here instead of staying with box 5 and spotting that single. It just gives a 1-6 pair in the box, but still. Something I would expect myself to do in a competition, for sure. This all seems pretty fine. I would expect a puzzle around this difficulty. I should be around the 2.5 minute mark if I'm firing on all cylinders, so I think I was a little over that. This is a little bit of slow scanning here. There's a little bit of work that can be done in box 3, a little bit of work that can be done in box 2, but I was just slow to spot that for some reason. One thing I was trying to do while recording these was, instead of doing random pencil flips, try to use the pencil to point to the place that I'm looking so that when I'm watching it back, I can give myself some feedback. It looks like I was pretty hit and miss with that here. That's an unnecessary pencil mark. One thing I'm trying to work on is like me pencil marking these corner mark 8s. I think that is an accurate pencil mark, but it's unnecessary. Like when there's this little information left to go in a puzzle. 8s you see in row 2, 3 already placed, there's only 2 spots for them to go. I think that's a waste of a second. And if I'm working on an easier classic Sudoku, I should not need to like clear the cache of my head by making that notation on paper. I should just keep that up here and save myself the pencil marking time. So a little inefficient there for sure. Let's keep going. This is really slow scanning. That one was placeable for a long time. Part of my practice over the past month or so has been what I call the, well, I guess it doesn't matter what I call it, the last 20 to 25 digits of the Sudoku. When there's no pencil marking required, just single, pop it in. And you can see here that it took, well, we'll see where we close out. Put the 6 and the 8 in, and then hit that timer. So we're about 2:53, and so let's see, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Here I have 11 digits left to place. It is inexcusably slow that it took me that amount of time to place these 11 digits. I do not know what slowed me down here. Or what led to scanning being this poor, but every single, like, why am I pencil marking that? There's, at that point, 9 digits left. I mean, I don't need to waste the time to do that. I should be solely focused on scanning. That 6 should put, I mean, yeah, that was a really sloppy end of this puzzle, actually, which is a bit of a bummer. Okay, a couple of good lessons there. Let's move on to number 2. You are going to be treated to the full cheesy intro for this channel every time. Okay, this will be the second classic Sudoku from the competition. This one is high 20s as well. I would expect, 3 minutes plus or minus. Let's see how we do. That's a good spot in the beginning. Bit weird after that. I'm going to pause for a moment. One thing I've been trying to get a little better at is not focusing on, let's look at 1s, or let's look at 8s, or let's look at 7s. I've been trying to use the geometry of the grid a little more effectively to look for where things can and can't go and make some like sweeping deductions. So I thought I had a pretty quick spot here in box 1. It's a really interesting shape of where like the digits are placed in the box. So this caught my eye immediately, and I thought, well, gosh, let me look across and down, just where that open space is. I saw the 3 and the 8 very quickly, popped the 3 and the 8, making the 4 and 6 immediately placeable, which I thought was a good break-in. It's a little bit faster than trying to place the number. And what I should have done immediately, instead of floating down here and let's look at 4, let's look at 8, which will eventually be placeable here, that kind of stuff, I would much rather I focus on geometry. Puzzles that are made by humans are going to have some level of symmetry most of the time. Rather, human-made puzzles by people who are good at making puzzles. And when you see interesting geometry like this, what I should do is hit the mirrored point on the grid and then notice, oh, look, I see the same shape here. It means I can make similar deductions. And I would have pretty quickly seen the 3 and the 7, allowing me to place the 6 and the 9 in the side over here too. And then I can go back and look for singles with where 4 can go, for example, after I do the geometric work. Like the 1 and the 6 here is kind of interesting because we have a hallway down in box 8, right? I'm really trying to focus more on geometry than where digits can go in the early parts of puzzles for what we call the break-in. And as I'm breaking in, I thought this was a good spot. A bit weird I didn't do the symmetrical work down here, but let's keep going. That's fine. That 2-7 is a fine center mark, I guess. I should be looking in box 8 here, not box 2. Again, with the hallway logic, I think I would have much rather I did that instead of working on row 5 and column 1. Like, know that the digits running up and down through boxes 2, 5, and 8 are going to allow you to pencil mark this area in pretty quickly. It probably would have saved me about 10 seconds in the final solve if I had focused on that first. So, a little bit of lost time there. Unfortunate. I like that I didn't stop to write this in. There's only a 2, 6, 9. Unless you're stuck, don't stop to write 2, 6, 9. Just remember that 2, 6, 9 is there. That probably saved me about 3 seconds, which is good. So I'm finding little saves, which tells me that some of the practice that I'm doing is paying off. I'm trying to do a little bit more visualization work. This was a weird close to the puzzle, so you'll notice that I'm looking for a way to clean this up, and one thing that was true in a lot of the early competitions for speed solving and is less true later on is that the puzzle setters are very comfortable with people bifurcating. And bifurcating, or guessing, is this can be a 2 or a 7. Well, I don't know which one it is right now, but why don't I just pick 2 and see what happens, or pick 7 and see what happens. And for speed solving, that is obviously efficient, because it either works 50-50, and if it doesn't, well gosh, I now know it's the other thing, so either way I get the correct digit pretty quickly and I can solve the puzzle. I don't do that. I am a logic-only speed solver, which means that my times will naturally take a bit longer because I'm never going to bifurcate, right? I'm never going to guess. So when I got to this moment in the puzzle, I'm looking for a logical deduction that lets me finish it up. And what I was doing in box 5 here was thinking through is there a placement of a 2 or a 7 that will remove where a 2 and a 7 can go anywhere in either box 4 or box 8? So for example, if a 2 goes here, does it lead to a cascade of digits or a cycle of digits where I can no longer put a 2 here or a 7 here, something like that? And it took me a moment to spot this. Like, some of these cycles take a little bit of time to calculate accurately. But I realized that placing a 7 in row 6, column 4 would break 7 in box 4, meaning there would be no home for it. So it took probably an extra 30 seconds than it should have. Probably about 40 seconds more than if I had guessed. 4 minutes a little slow, but knowing I had to cycle through to spot an elimination, I'm not too displeased with that. Okay. No guessing allowed is the only rule. All right, puzzle 3. Just realized I have the same mug from the video here. Oh, I'm wearing the same sweater too. Oh, I just realized. Small world. I'm doing this a few days later. That's a fine spot. I don't love that I wrote the 4-5 down. Again, 2 options left in the box. I think that's a waste of a second. Hopefully I stay vertically here. You see another example of like symmetry in different sides of the grid. I wish that instead of scanning through box 2, 5, 8 right away, that I had done the work in box 1, then jumped down to box 9. As you'll see here in a moment, when I do eventually get to box 9, you can make some pretty quick deductions. That was a slow spot on the 6 in the corner. So one of the things that I'm trying to improve in my speed solving is rim scanning. So it can be a little tricky because some of these digits, like the 6 and the 8 here, are far away from this corner cell, or the 4 and the 9 are far away from this corner cell, so it can take an extra moment to make some of those quick scans. But this 6 was there for a little while. So normally when there's an empty spot in the corner and I see some digits being placed along, I'll usually pause and then just scan to see if I can pop a corner digit in. So that took an extra few seconds to spot. I don't love how long it's taking me to get to box 6 here. Like in speed solving, if you aren't making quick progress in one area of the grid, you need to trust and believe in yourself and say, well, gosh, maybe this isn't where I'm supposed to make progress. So if I'm looking, at box 4 and 5, and I can't figure out the thing, like the crux of what I'm looking for, I need to move on. I think I'm a little too precious with, well, let me really make sure that I'm not, leaving unexplored logic in this area. So I wish that I'd gotten to this box that I'm working in right now, box 6, a little more quickly. Probably 20 seconds from when I started talking. I was able to ultimately make some deductions like the 7 in box 4 that I placed by staying there, but I think I would have made quicker progress through the puzzle if at the 3-minute mark I had just jumped over to box 6 and said, well, gosh, can I fill some of this in? The answer was yes. So how's my end of puzzle scanning? We're in crunch time right now. Looks like about 14 digits left to place, and I'm able to do that in about 14 seconds. But I completely missed the 2 and the 8 here. Really, I'm pleased with the placement of the digits in the bottom part of the grid toward the end. But not even noticing that this 8 and 2 were not placed at the end. Eventually, this would be part of the answer key, right? So you definitely can't skip those digits. A little sloppy as well. I'm not going to chalk that up to nerves recording this. While it was my first time, I think the nerves of recording myself for the first time would cancel out the nerves of an actual competition. So I think that's just really sloppy scanning on my part. I was pleased with the early spot here, pleased with how quickly I did the work here. A little bit better end of puzzle scanning for the last 20 digits, but missing this is inexcusable in my opinion. So let's move on. Puzzle 4. These were hard classics, by the way. Knowing that you get to the end of the second puzzle and you have to go through, unless I miss something obvious, a cycle to close it out logically is tricky by the Turkish delegation. All right, so I'm going to continue pointing this out. So you'll notice the symmetry of the puzzle. This shape here, the corners are getting that nice kind of slanted trim all the way around. The place that I would expect myself in a speed solve to start here is box 2 and box 8. It has by far the most information, and let's see what I end up doing. I spin my pencil for no reason. I'm looking at the boxes. Okay, good. That's fine. Now that I'm watching this back in real time, I can end up popping 1-3 pairs into column 4 and 5. Hopefully you can see that as well, that eventually there's going to be pencil marked 1-3s in these cells, which means that I'm going to get a triple in 2 of the columns inside of box 5. I am really slow to spot that here for some reason. I really like at the start of the puzzle how we didn't start writing right away. I think it's important to take 3-4 seconds and just observe the puzzle. Be like, here's where the most information is. Are there any obvious deductions I can make? Where do I think I'm going to get hung up? And just try to make some quick path decisions of where you're going to start for the first minute. So I'm glad I took that time. I'm not pleased that I stopped to continue to rim 9s around the grid instead of working through here. These 9s will be placeable at any moment. So for me, I would much rather I continue working in the boxes that I was, make some pencil marks, and see if I can continue to fill in some information in the one blank box we have in the entire Sudoku. Again, those 9s will be there. I did not need to do that right now. There's the 1-3s I was talking about. You can do the same thing in box 2. There we go. Which means I've got 2 triples and thus 3 triples inside of box 5. Okay, I got there pretty quickly. It was around the minute mark after I did some easier Sudoku around the grid, which is fine. I don't love that I wrote the 4, 5, 7 in. I wasn't able to get any digits there. You can see pretty quickly that you're not going to be able to place a 4, 5, 7 with some horizontal scanning through rows 4, 5, 6. This notation right here was a waste of about 2 seconds. I'm hoping I go back to box 1 after I finish marking here. I'm curious what I end up doing. Spin my pencil. Okay, box 3 is fine. I really would have liked to see me go back over here, though. Good placement on the 6. Man, that's a solid 10 seconds of inaction on the grid. For a 46-point puzzle, that's weird, considering that I had made some slow removals in the center. You'll notice back around this moment in time, when I was writing the 6, 8, and 9 in here earlier in the puzzle, you can tell that this is poor scanning. This can only be an 8 and a 9, as a 9 is looking directly into that box. Took me a really long time to get back to, take a deep breath and scan and make sure you didn't miss any eliminations in the grid, and I did. This couldn't have been a 9. That was an easy elimination, and it took me a while to spot that. And the problem is that also gave me the 8, which means I can then place the 8 here, which is, again, progress in the puzzle that I missed because of poor scanning. So what that tells me is that adding in scanning specific practice to my practice routine is exactly the right work to do. It paid off in moments toward the end of the puzzles, but here there was a pretty clear miss. So those are the sort of inconsistencies I'm hoping to eliminate by the end of this year, where I can get really consistent with some of my scanning in these puzzles. All right, let me move my mouse out of the way so it's not distracting. Don't you dare write that this could be a 5. Don't you do it. That was also slow. I've gotten in the habit recently, and I don't know where it comes from, of, when I stall out, I want to either get to a different part of the puzzle, or I want to start looking for some singles or pairs around the grid. And if I had just taken a deep breath when I was looking at box 4 here, I think I would have pretty quickly seen that was the only spot for a 6 in box 4, which would have allowed me to, pop the 1, 3, 5 triple in and make some more progress here. Dude, this can't be a 5. Okay. You can see that I pencil marked 3, 4, 5, which is, again, poor scanning. The only place for a 5 in box 3 is in one of these 2 cells in column 9, and those are looking directly into this cell, and I notated that it could be a 5, which is a bummer. And if I had not done that and been like, oh, there can't be a 5 in either one of these cells, I would have been looking for some wings on 5. If you don't know what wings are, I have a video about that later, so you can learn about some advanced solving techniques. But either way, sloppy scanning, which it seems like is going to be, that is probably going to be one of my primary takeaways from watching my solves from what I've seen so far. Especially like end of puzzle, but even sometimes I'm pencil marking in the middle and just not properly scanning across the grid to see if there's additional eliminations. Almost lost my pencil there. That would have been pretty bad. That's an awful pencil mark. Having to write 1347 into the cell definitely tells me that I was feeling a little bit stuck here. I like that my pencil's traveling around the grid. Like, if you feel stuck, don't stay in the same area. So I don't feel like I should be stuck in this moment. I should be solving a little more smoothly. But if I do feel stuck for some reason, I'm glad that I'm kind of bouncing around the grid a little bit. Eventually figured out the 7 and the 3, and then the puzzle kind of unwinds from here. So around 640, we got into the what I would consider endgame. You'll notice that I'm no longer erasing pencil marks. I'm just writing over them in pencil as I'm spotting singles around the grid. That's what you want to do. If you're going to erase and write a whole number in, don't. Just write a little more boldly to save that time. That was a habit I was in a while ago. I'm glad I started to break that. That's about a minute longer than I would expect a 46-point Sudoku to take me. You can tell that I got stuck around the 5-minute mark, and that really slowed me down. So, mid-game classic speed solving looks like it needs a little bit of work. So that's good to know. I've been focusing a lot on the last 20, 25 digits, maybe a little too heavily. It's worth considering. Maybe I need to get back to start to finish classic speed solving instead of being a little more targeted with my practice. That was a good spot on the 1. Hopefully I spot the 1 and the 9 logic in box 4 pretty quickly. If you're speed solving, one thing you want to be on the lookout for is if you see multiple pairs of digits looking into a box. So if you look at column 1 here, there's a 1 and a 9. There's also a 1 and a 9 here in box 6 that are all looking into this box. So you can't have a 1-9 there or there, meaning you get a 1-9 pair here. And then there's a 1-9 pair in column 4, meaning you get a 1-9 pair in these 2 cells. So that's the sort of logic you want to be looking for and why geometry can be so powerful. I'm not really looking at 1s and 9s. I just saw a hallway. I'm like, oh, there's a 1 and a 9 there, and also there, meaning you get, this kind of cascade effect throughout the grid. And I think spotting that 1, let me place a 1 here, let me do some logic on this side of the grid, that's fine. I'm hoping I spot the 1-9 here in box 4 pretty quickly. I mean, I just saw it now watching the video, so. I'm focusing more on numbers here, which is weird. Again, I really don't want to be number hunting until about halfway through a puzzle. I want to do as much as I can with geometry. There we go. There's the 1-9 going to box 5. Good. Now 2-3 becomes a little bit interesting once you place those digits into box 2. I said, once you place those digits. I wish that I was doing a little bit of work with 3s here. Sixes. Thank you. 6 only had 1 home in box 9. That took me a little while to spot. Good spot on the 3. You can tell I really stopped indicating with my pencil where I'm going to like make it easier for me to give myself feedback. That's a good spot on the 2-3 pair. It's a tricky thing, like while you're speed solving, simulating competition settings, remembering like you don't normally gesture around with your pencil, right? You're just using your eyes. So I remember catching myself in moments being like, oh, I'm not moving where I'm looking, which for now me is a little harder to figure out exactly where my brain is going. That'll certainly take some practice. I wish I was taking a moment to scan box 5. We've created a little alleyway here. Good. All right, there's the pencil mark on the 5. That at least means I looked for it. Like, once I get the 1923 here, I would have liked to, again, be thorough with your scanning, right? I call it finishing your food. Don't skip courses, right? If you're doing work in box 5 and you feel like you've done all of that, quickly scan. Up, down, left, right. Any other eliminations that you can make. This was a really cool puzzle. I really liked a lot of the logic that I ended up finding toward the end. I would say that it felt more difficult than the classic Sudoku that I've done in any of the competitions in the last couple of years. Like, the last 2 puzzles here are pretty brutal. Or they felt that way when I was solving them. It's possible I missed an easier deduction. As we just talked about, my scanning has been pretty hit and miss, so entirely possible. I would expect for a classic Sudoku in the 50s, it'll take me around somewhere between 7 and 8 minutes, which is not where I'd like to be. But once you get into the 50s, you're looking for things like triples and quads and possibly an X or a Y wing, things like that. So a little tougher to spot. So I'm willing to forgive a little bit of extra time. Okay. This felt pretty good. I worked out the 2, 4, 5 in box 4 pretty quickly. That felt like the crux of the puzzle for sure. And at this point, I'm just scanning for singles. So it looks like I'm going to be pretty slow with this again. I was definitely feeling there's just a 2 placeable. Like, this is insane to me. Maybe insane is too harsh a word. But this 2 has been sitting here looking directly down this hallway. I just call them hallways when you have like an opening strip of unplaced digits. Meaning that a 2 must go here. That's going to cascade into the 2, 3, 4 on this side, and then you can wrap it up pretty quickly. Not taking a moment after I wrote that 2 down to scan is poor speed solving, in my opinion. I shouldn't be making mistakes like that for how long I've been competing. So again, it's end of puzzle scanning. I think I knew that this was taking me longer than it should, so I was putting a little extra pressure on myself. And as someone who is a historic negative self-talker, that can be a bit of a tricky thing to overcome. Yeah, exasperated face indeed. Peace. All right. Puzzle 6. This was brutal. When you've got a classic Sudoku in the 70s or 80 point value, you know you're going to be running into some pretty tricky logic. And these are the moments that people who do bifurcate, you know, or if you remember, or guess their way through puzzles, they have a serious advantage because I don't do that. So I'm just going to be looking for whatever logical deductions I can make, as small or unhelpful as they might be. Okay, I'm glad I took a moment here. This is a difficult puzzle, so just by the point value alone, you want to take a moment and scan. That's another cute moment. You'll notice that based on, this was really good at the beginning for me. I'm going to pause for a moment. Remember the 1 and 9 thing that I was talking about and how 1s and 9s were pretty obviously important in the previous puzzle? I immediately started scanning for the same thing. It's one of those like meta game Sudoku speed solving things for a competition where human beings will tie a thread that's going to be woven through all of their puzzles during a competition. So because these are all made by incredible Sudoku setters and solvers, they were like, hey, 1s and 9s were important in the last one. Wouldn't it be cheeky if 1s and 9s were important in this one in the beginning to help with some of the break-in? And you'll notice, quickly place that 1, you got the 1, 9, the 1, 9, and the 1, 9, giving you the pair again to pay homage to the previous puzzle. So I thought that was really cute and helpful in this solve. I'm glad I corner marked these 3s. Normally I would say, you know, don't worry about it because you're going to corner mark these 3s, but knowing how difficult the puzzle is, this might be helpful later and make sure I don't miss something. I do tend toward overmarking some of the more difficult puzzles, knowing I'll need more information to make deductions, so I think that's a permissible mark. I'm glad I didn't do the 3 and the 9, or the 6 and the 9 in box 5, rather. That would not provide any help whatsoever, so. Okay, I'm doing some number scanning now. I wish I was spending a little more time with geometry. Like box 3 and box 7 are kind of interesting. Again, anytime there's a hallway, I'm always keen to spend some time looking at the digits that are kind of staring down it. And it took me a little bit to make some of those deductions, like with the 6 and in box 7. But it looks like I'm solving pretty calmly so far, which is good. At the 3-minute mark, I've got a couple digits in, I've got some good pencil marks. And I know this one's going to be a beast. This digit will become really important later in the puzzle, whatever it ends up being, the 5 or the 8. This was incredibly difficult break-in. What I remember doing here was I found... Let's see, I ended up placing a digit in box 4, and then I ended up spending some time with 6s in columns 4 and 5, eventually giving me a 4, 7, 9 triple in a column, which then let me make an additional deduction with 5s. Then I found an X-wing on 5s, X-wing on 6s. Then there was an X cycle. There's something else that I'm missing. I'm curious to watch this back and see if there was anything that I missed. I haven't put this into a solver aid yet to see if there was an easier path through this puzzle, but I remember it feeling pretty brutal at the time. So since I'm going to have some time, anytime that I find myself doing an X cycle in a speed solve, there is a part of me that feels like I've missed something a little bit easier. And that might not be the case, right? Maybe the intended logical path is to use an X cycle and make an elimination due to an impossibility later. Time jump into the 10-minute range there, because I basically was whittling down 6s in columns 4 and 5 for 4 minutes. It took a really long time to find a logical path forward. But then once you do that, I'm pretty pleased with how quickly I did the horizontal scanning through boxes 4, 5, and 6. Placed those digits pretty quickly, actually. The X-wing on 5s gave me a 4. I'll eventually... It's really... Man, I might actually start doing some of these solves for recordings in pen. You folks are probably noticing it's a bit difficult to make out some of the softer pencil marks. So at this point, what I'm doing is I'm playing with 8s, because it's the number I've spent the least amount of time with. And eventually what I conclude is that wherever I end up placing an 8 in box 1, there will always be an 8 in the cell in the corner. So that's an example of an X cycle. 2 options for 8s, both of them lead to an 8 here, meaning that in either version of the puzzle, whichever one I pick, this must be true. And then once you pop the 8 in, you can make a couple of other single deductions, and then the whole thing kind of unwinds. Unwinding these pencil marks after a very frustrating solve in the 16-minute mark, I'm not surprised it's taking me a little bit longer. Like at this point, you have that voice being like, you should be faster, go, 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 you have to make up time. And that's just getting in the way of spotting some of the digits here. So I think while this is wrapping up, I can make some conclusions based on what I saw in the classics. I think that's, in general, I'm going to exclude this puzzle as an outlier because of how complicated some of the logic I ended up finding and needing was. Like, this digit is placeable, but I'm not going to beat myself up over that. That's fine. Yikes, but I am going to watch myself do it and feel weird. So, okay, I'm going to pause. Here's what I've learned watching this back. Indeed. Thank you, folks, for sticking with me. Number 1, I think my end of puzzle scanning is improving. I think it was taking me about 1.5 seconds on average for the last 20, 25 digits before. I'm sorry, before it was about 2 seconds per final digit. My scanning was pretty slow. I'm down to a little under 1.5 seconds, roughly, watching this in hindsight, which is good. That means my end of puzzle last 20, 25 digits is improving. So that is a good note. I think that's my mid-game scanning, like working through a box, pausing and going, okay, up, down, left, right, do I see any other eliminations? Pretty poor, I would say. Or rather, if it's mediocre, it has regressed a bit. I feel like I wouldn't have made that mistake on the 8 and the 9 in puzzle 4, as an example, a couple of months ago. So that tells me that I'm probably over-practicing on the end of puzzles. when there's no other like tiny pencil mark eliminations and you're doing singles, I probably overcompensated. So I think one thing I need to do with my practice is bring back in more difficult sudoku and full solves. I've been doing some technical training on the end of puzzles where I'll solve 80% of it, and then I just have a folder saved with a bunch of like classic sudoku with 20, 25 digits left and just blitz that to get some practice. It's been helping, but I've been doing it too much, I think. So that's good to know. Other takeaways. I think I'm still pencil marking a little bit too much. If I have a need to mark 3 center marks, or worse, 4 center marks, like something has usually gone wrong. So I think I need to continue my visualization training. I still don't trust myself fully from watching these solves back to remember stuff. Like in this puzzle up here, I remember the moment I filled in the 7, 8, and 9 as center marks, I realized that I wasn't really trusting myself to remember information. So I think I need to continue my visualization training, maybe do an extra puzzle with that a day. So I think that's probably how I adjust my practice. Less end, more full and middle, and then an increase in the amount of visualization, so I need to mark less. So, okay, those are pretty good takeaways. If you bothered to watch this, thank you. Hopefully you learned a little bit about speed solving. And for Matt, probably the only person who does watch this, get back to practice. Peace.